I think you're right. It's similar to breakfast in that you should pick your spot. It's combo control. It's not oops all spells. You don't just jam and go as fast as possible every time. A really good skill with Doomsday is a little bit of patience. You know, if your opponent isn't putting pressure on you, you can sit back. There's no reason. The combos remain difficult-ish to interact with, so there's no impetus to just jam.
Stop! I need more stuff. Can't you see I need more stuff? But now we go.
Big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. If you want to support the channel, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. In return, you'll get ad-free content and a bonus episode every single week. Thanks for watching. Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me this week, special guest, Eric Ratkowski. Eric, Doomsday talk today. You know, I think we're here to level set the deck a little bit, find out how the deck's been doing since the ban of Frog. The meta has settled, I think now. But first off, it's always great to have you on the show. So thanks for coming on.
It's always great to be here, even if I'm a last minute fill-in. But I appreciate it, Zach. Appreciate the work you guys do. This time you're not last
minute fill-in. This episode is going to go like a week from now on Thursday.
So I didn't have to bump the Stifle Knot player.
No, the Stifle Knot that came. You commented on the video. Get out of here.
I know.
I was like, "Thanks, Eric." But yeah, Phil bailed on me yesterday, so I had to find somebody last minute. You were one of the people. You were actually the first person I reached out to, because I was like, that's something we need to discuss, is like what Doomsday is up to. It's a deck I've been, kind of like on the fence about, like trying to play. Like maybe I'll pick up my fourth UC. Maybe I'll get a Lion's Eye Diamond kind of thing, and that's kind of all I need left to like play the deck. So I'm always kind of interested to see, what the vibe of the deck is at any one point in time. So I would say, total guess here, but I would say like we're probably coming off of a high where you had that tempo option.
Yeah, that specific version cannot exist anymore. And some of the brighter minds in Doomsday, again, Wonder Pro, Max Trini keeps doing well with it, and Eureka, Mike Reed, they still do well. Mike, I know, has been toying around with a like a tempo-ish version. It's playing like a playset of Barrelgoyfs and some Murktides and stuff. So you can still play a blue-black control good stuff deck that has, similar to the way Reanimator has, their like tight package of combo finish. You can just put Doomsday in there.
Yeah.
Doomsday takes a few more cards, but you're still just doing the blue-black stuff. I recently posted a 5-0 with a deck that is Turbo Reanimator in the main with a full 13 card swap out for Doomsday on the sideboard.
This is the style that one of the guys at my local completely got me with. Just switched out half his deck, and I was like, Reanimator. He Dark Ritualed, and I didn't even like put it together. And then like the next game, he was just like, and I'm Doomsdaying now, and I was like, you got me. Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield.com. Moxfield is the best deck building website on the internet. You can find all of my and Phil's decks in links below, including decks from this episode. And if you do, you'll be directly supporting the channel.
It's not foolproof, obviously, but against decks that are going to need to really fight hard against the Reanimator stuff, you definitely get people. I'm always on the fence about these kind of jukes, because like once people start seeing them coming, or if you're playing like a small local with 10 people, I'm sitting next to the people I'm going to play in each round. They're going to hear me casting Doomsday. It loses a lot of its power.
Someone's going to comment like, oh, you're not on Doomsday this time. You're on Reanimator, you're going to get caught.
Yeah. And, before we go too far down this particular road, like the alternate plans in Doomsday take advantage of the fact that the Doomsday combo is compact, but it's maybe not as compact as Blue-Black Reanimator. So if you're choosing to play Doomsday as a combo finish in a deck that's doing anything else, you really have to answer the question of why you're not just playing Blue-Black Reanimator.
Yeah. Well, how when you say it's compact, I think that's a good place to ask some questions. How compact is Doomsday? Because we know like Reanimator is basically 10 cards, right? Like you got Reanimate, you've got two
Entomb.
fatties and 4 Entombs, and you can throw that into any deck, right? 10 cards. So
Right.
what about what about Doomsday?
So I guess the minimum is probably in the range of 11 to 13 because it depends that like that's the sideboard that we're talking about in this deck that I'm mentioning. I have to take out 13 cards and bring in 13 cards. But you can cheat on some of the numbers because that deck is already running Dark Ritual. So I want to take a step back here as we're talking about the positioning of Doomsday and the compactness of it because it is relevant. So first, I have to caveat, I do not feel comfortable talking with a lot of confidence like I'm some Doomsday expert. It drives me crazy when people make these like
our Doomsday expert. That's the way I look at it.
Okay. I'm a local Doomsday expert. I'm a local Doomsday enjoyer. I definitely keep my finger on the pulse. I'm not an innovator. And anyway, that I just want to put that disclaimer out there because I think that Magic is a vast game with lots of opinions that are backed up by play style and the particular meta that you're playing in, and making broad proclamations, which sometimes happens on the Discord and drives me crazy, where people are like, I'm 75% against Delver. Like, maybe that is true. I'm privately skeptical, but maybe that is true. But that is, in all other cases, a really difficult matchup. Okay, so that's my disclaimer. So Doomsday is compact because, as again, a really good Doomsday player, Max Carini, said, the actual combo is Dark Ritual and Fast Mana plus Doomsday.
Okay.
That's when he is playing that combo, he's trying to maximize the chances that he has both of those cards. The problem is that Personal Tutor is a really poor impression of Doomsday. And if you look at other top combo decks like Sneak and Show or Epic Storm, they have multiple action pieces. We're all playing this kind of the same fast mana. Doomsday's advantage is that it can play this disruption, so it's got Force of Will and Thoughtseize and Daze, and that's historically been what Doomsday is good at. I often have found that my success or failure with Doomsday is inextricably linked to how often I actually draw Doomsday. I lose so many games where I just never draw it. I never find it in the top 35 cards of my deck.
It's the same problem I have with Pre-Modern and Stasis. So if you don't draw the namesake card, you're in trouble.
Right. It turns out, as I've said this on the podcast before, if a deck is named after the card, you got to have the card. So, Doomsday constantly hovers. I know some people really hate it and they really hate Thassa's Oracle, but the thing that keeps it right on the edge of competitiveness is the fact that you have to cast Doomsday. And Personal Tutor is okay. It's obviously good enough that people win with it, but the difference between a hand that has Personal Tutor in it and one that has Doomsday in it is so vast. Like, you have more time for your opponent to develop stuff. You have more time for them to know what you're on. You're really
literally
huge.
telling them when you cast Personal Tutor, get ready.
Putting it right on top. And that's like, and so when it's not, Doomsday can absolutely spike tournaments, and the players that are doing well with it are very good. There's no question about that. But also you have to get a little bit lucky. And I've talked to plenty of very good Doomsday players that, it wasn't their night. They didn't draw Doomsday. They washed out in the first couple of rounds. That's why a lot of pro players go towards tempo decks or things that have more 50-50 matchups, right? If Doomsday ever was able to find Doomsday, it would be broken immediately. And you asked me, I think the last time I was on, like, what could Doomsday get? Or what is Doomsday, finding like new cards that might have an effect? I think you asked me that before, maybe like Outlaws or something. The problem with Doomsday is that anything that would make it pretty good would just break it.
Yeah, like Mystical Tutor, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
The idea, I think Phil mentioned that Mystical Tutor might be okay to unban. That's absurd. Like, Mystical Tutor would immediately get jammed into Doomsday, and I believe make it S tier.
Yeah.
Because it finds anything you need. It finds the mana, it finds Doomsday, it finds Force. So we can just put that discussion aside.
Yeah.
Like, they're
My
not
concern is that
they're not gonna
it
unban
would probably enable other decks to be also busted, and then we would be in this, everyone's either playing Doomsday or Show and Tell or something like that.
Yeah, but I do think it's best in Doomsday because it will find, like, Doomsday's a little faster than Sneak and Show. Reanimator is easier to hate right at the beginning. Like Leyline of the Void is uncounterable, so that's what keeps that from being tier 0, as it is already very good. But the point of the Reanimator deck right now is that Leyline of the Void is not lights out for them. They're just playing other good creatures and other blue-black control stuff. Yeah. It's very small in there. I do think Mystical Tutor would be Doomsday cracked. Other people would abuse it as well, but because Doomsday already is a competitive deck, that would just bust it in half.
Yeah, then we'd be talking a year from now the way I'm talking about Entomb should be banned.
Yeah.
We'd have another like card that is a staple of a staple of like what it feels like to play Legacy that's like on the block again, and I think that ultimately is not where, certainly not where Doomsday players want to be, but honestly it's a feel bad for the format.
Yeah, I think the opportunity cost of unbanning Mystical Tutor, because it only makes possible broken stuff.
Yeah.
Sure, you're right. Maybe many combo decks would be playing it, but only combo decks would be playing it. I don't think it has a place.
I'm not going to play it in Delver, that's for sure. No.
Which maybe is a good stepping off point for like where Doomsday is in the meta as a whole.
Yeah.
What have you been playing, Zach?
I have been going back and forth between Delver, which is what I've mainly been playing, but I think I'm jumping off of Delver and moving back to Breakfast, just because it feels like that's a deck like I did really well at a local with Delver, so I wanted to try it at a larger event. Played it in the cup, went 3-4. And for what it's worth, like I lost to Breakfast twice, and one of my losses was 0-2, so like fine. But one of my losses was like I had him dead on board, and he just top decked the card and won the game when I had like a hand of nothing and just like 4 creatures on the board. And I was like, well, I got to end this game as fast as possible. I'll just slam everything onto the board. But I think that I personally want to be on a deck that can do that. Can be like, well, you just didn't get the answers you needed. I'm winning the game. And a Thassa's Oracle deck, we were talking at the beginning of the episode about like how I've been contemplating Doomsday. Those decks seem like the style of deck that I like to play, which is like that combo control kind of situation where you can put a plan into play, make your opponent respect that plan, and the second that they don't, when you're doing the fair thing, you do the unfair thing, and I like that style of deck. So, long story short, that's kind of where I'm at as far as what I want to play right now.
Yeah, I think Breakfast and Doomsday occupy roughly similar niches. Obviously, Breakfast is better against some things and worse against others. Maybe the mana is worse.
One of the reasons I actually asked you about the compactness of the combo is because I know that the combo for Breakfast is slightly more compact. Maybe it's like 6 cards.
Don't you have to play? I mean, you have to play Force Cephalid Illusionists, and then. Yeah.
So I need the Illusionist. I need the it's probably a bit larger actually. Now that I think about it. But the main thing is like you need 2 Narcomoebas, you need the Dread Return, right? You need the you need the Thassa's Oracle, so that's 4 plus, let's say, another 10 cards. So it's like 14.
I guess it depends how much you're counting the fast mana as a part of the Doomsday combo. And that's the crossover between in this Reanimator deck that I'm talking about. Why you can make that switch, because all the fast mana is helping the Turbo Doomsday and Turbo Reanimator plan.
Yeah.
So 13 cards is not exactly accurate. And I did quote Wonder Pro before saying that the actual combo is Doomsday plus the fast mana, Ritual, Cabal Ritual, Petals. Max tries to have 10 pieces of fast mana, whether that's 4 Dark Rituals, 4 Lotus Petals, and 2 Cabal Rituals, or numbers in that vicinity, because the math says that drastically increases your chances of finding both at the beginning of the game or early enough in the game to make that go really quick. I think the most prominent difference in those two decks is that when you are going off fast with Cephalid Breakfast, you can keep Force in your hand, but the fastest wins from Doomsday do not, because you have to go off through LED. So like a turn 1 Doomsday win in some rare world where they don't force like in the blind, your opponent could soul read you and you go off with Doomsday, they decline to force it, and you think that it's time to just go. You're not going to have any protection when the Oracle hits the stack because you had to use your LED. You typically wouldn't do that against an unknown opponent. There's usually not much equity in trying to just jam. By the same token, most people are going to force the Doomsday every time because, again, that's the combo in the deck. Like, it's a 1-card combo.
That's actually something I brought up with the Stifle Knot players. Like, sort of something I've been learning with Breakfast is like when I first played, I did that like 100 games to try and like level set myself for Eternal Weekend. And I played the first 50 games super aggressively, just try and jam, just try and see what would happen. And the second 50 games, I played more like a combo deck. My win percentage was relatively the same, but I felt like I had a lot more going for me when I played it like a control deck. And it's sort of like what we were talking about with the Stifle Knot players. Like, this is a control deck that has a slam the door combo, but it's just not like in the game. Do you think that there's a similar vibe for that when you're playing Doomsday, where you're like, okay, now's the time to go, or do you think it behooves you to slam?
I think you're right. It's similar to Breakfast in that you should pick your spot. It's combo control. It's not oops all spells. You don't just jam and go as fast as possible every time. A really good skill with Doomsday is a little bit of patience. You know, if your opponent isn't putting pressure on you, you can sit back. There's no reason. The combos remain difficult-ish to interact with, so there's no impetus to just jam. There's interesting game techniques here that we could probably discuss for hours about the theory when you decide to jam or not, depending on your interaction. Like I assume that modern oops might be different, but oops in general, the longer the game goes, the worse it's going to get for you. It's not exactly true with Doomsday. You could draw more disruption.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I was thinking about with Doomsday, where I thought maybe it would behoove you to jam because, like, you're playing fast mana, you're playing all these cards that otherwise, like, say, like, go fast. You know, like, if you draw a Dark Ritual later in the game, it might help you to, like, double Dark Ritual to get that out. But really, what Dark Ritual is telling you is cast this now, win the game, right? I mean, in my head, thinking about this deck as a layman. Hey, Legacy fans, since you're enjoying the show, please like and subscribe to the video. It helps the channel grow.
Support Eternal Durdles on Patreon so we can create even more content and cover events.
Patreons get an ad-free RSS feed, 4 bonus episodes a month, and Discord recognition. Join the Durdle Maniacs at patreon.com/eternaldurdles.
Now back to the show.
That's a good point, and I admit that maybe this theoretical discussion is going a little bit over my head.
I mean, Swords to Plowshares in the Breakfast deck says, you know, like in that same Dark Ritual spot says, this game is going to go longer. I'm playing Swords to Plowshares, right?
That's fair. So the control part of combo control in Breakfast is a little deeper, and I would say that makes sense. Doomsday is a little faster than Breakfast.
For sure. And you can go off on turn 1. I cannot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. There's been versions before that played like 1 or 2 Lotus Petals, right?
Yeah.
That's just
one was like the way people were playing it, but I think that now Larson's kind of dialed in on like the Lotus Petals not necessary.
Right. So you're seeking to control the game until you can go off to a certain extent. And Doomsday does have that ability. Once in a while, you just open cracked turn 1 hands with protection, especially because we're playing Thoughtseize. So like the hand disruption is a little more compact than Force of Will.
Yeah.
It's more likely that you're going to have the resources left over. You could Thoughtseize their one piece of interaction and then go, which is trickier because that costs mana. So Cephalid Breakfast doesn't have that line necessarily.
not in its current form. It's ever since Nadu, we've eschewed black for green, obviously because Nadu was stupid.
Really good, yeah.
Nadu was a really ridiculous Magic card, and to not play it seems crazy. But like, there was a version, let's say a year and a half ago that was Staff of the Storyteller and Cabal Therapy and that sort of stuff was your kind of B plan.
Yeah, Koval won a legacy.
It's exactly the event I was talking about. In fact,
yeah. So yeah, I guess Doomsday is competitive. Let's say it fits low tier 1. It's very meta dependent.
Yeah,
Doomsday is historically not very good against tempo decks. It's just not. Red-based decks that have Pyroblast and Lightning Bolt on top of all the stuff that blue-black has, which is Force of Will. They don't have Thoughtseize, which is like the only thing that you say they have going for it, that matchup. It remains difficult. I don't care what anyone says. You're fighting a losing battle. Lots of Doomsday decks have some combination of Barrowgoyf and Shieldred in the sideboard, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it really begs the question, if you're fighting the uphill battle trying to protect and resolve and protect a Barrowgoyf, which doesn't have that many hits in Doomsday, it's not drawing you a card every turn the way it was in the tempo versions. You just don't have the threat density. You should just be playing blue-black tempo. If your game that you want to be playing is resolve a Barrowgoyf and then win, blue-black tempo is better at that.
Yeah, you should be resolving Barrowgoyfs and putting Baleful Strixes in your hand.
Yeah.
Something that kind of jumped out at me while you're talking about how it's bad against tempo decks is, with the stock of Volcanic Island Rising, right? Because now people are back to blue-red, plus X Delver decks. It's funny that like there's sort of a double paradigm there where like Frog's gone, so you lose that style of the deck for Doomsday, but also you have to worry about Lightning Bolt in the faster style tempo decks coming in. So there's two things that are sort of a strike against the deck right now.
And like you can see some of these things in the trends on Magic Online. Mm-hmm. So after the ban, I really feel like Doomsday maybe dropped off the first page, or it was like in the high teens in terms of most played decks.
Yeah.
But now Magic Online is notoriously combo heavy. Your experience in a league can be so varied.
Mm-hmm.
It's really impossible to determine the online meta, but let's just say I'm going to hit more combo online than I do at a given day at Gamestoria, where we all know they love their tempo.
True.
Doomsday is not a very good choice if you know that meta is going to look like a lot of tempo. And when I play across the river here in Poughkeepsie, I think Phil has played over at some of these stores. I know that 80% of the players are going to be bringing some form of tempo. I should not be playing Doomsday there. If I know that for a fact, I should just not fight that battle.
I was going to say, do you go for it and just jam on hard mode so that you're ready for Eternal Weekend, or do you switch decks?
Yeah, I've been switching decks. I've been playing a lot of other random crap like Sudden Substitution Combo and Dredge and nonsense. But if you're playing the online meta, or you think you're going to be seeing a lot of combo, or you think that the Eldrazi and Mono Red players are going to be out there trying to prey on tempo, I don't know if those decks do necessarily, but I suspect they have good game.
Great, let me tell you.
Then Doomsday is a pretty good choice.
Yeah.
And I think that's the calculus that people like M. Himukai, who won a challenge with it, and Wonder Pro, I think that's the calculus. And you play the matchup lottery to a bit, but otherwise, yeah, that's what they're expecting.
So the current build of the deck, you're leaning more towards the Personal Tutor side of the deck, and then your build right now is a juke where you go from Reanimator to Doomsday, and then kind of just like let game 3 be like, what do you think? What do you think I'm going to do? 15 cards in,
Well, the trick, Zach, is you don't get to game 3.
That is the trick. Yes, that is the trick.
If you do get to game 3, both people are going to be confused and out of their minds.
Yeah.
Yes, the decks that have been doing the best, the ones that are placing prominently in the challenges, are Personal Tutor builds. This other nonsense like the Reanimator, Juke, it's maybe a good league deck. I would not want to take it into a challenge where people are definitely looking you up and they're going to see that my latest result is with that. I've been actually trying, as a side note, trying desperately to get any other deck up on my MTGO history because it just says Doomsday all day, and I just wanted to say something else so that people don't immediately. I'm not famous. I'm not Bryant Cook. Like
Yeah.
I don't need to keep my brand steady. But yeah, if you look at the most recent top decks, there's some flex slots. You know, Personal Tutor is so bad that people play anywhere from 2 to 4. Sometimes they play the 1 ring. Sometimes they play more discard in the main. Sometimes they play 1 days. Sometimes they play 4. You see Wonder Pro going back and forth on those numbers. And then the sideboard can either be some of this creature plan. So 4 to 6 creatures with Murktide Regents, Barrel Goyfs, Shieldrids, whatever you like the best. I personally don't like Murktide all that much because the red decks are almost always bringing in Pyroblast. It's not great. I don't know what they're taking out for it. But
I was about to say, I'm not sold on Pyroblast as being like great against your deck. It's just like maybe there's a bad card that I want to take out.
Yeah, but I can't
like
imagine
the
what
answer
that would
is
be.
I would probably take out Murktide Regents against you because like probably not casting them, and like anything is better than something I'm not casting.
Sure. Yeah, and I think the main deck of Tempo is so good that I could make a honest argument as a Doomsday player that you maybe shouldn't be boarding anything. You want to bring in your consigned memories, and otherwise, like Wasteland, DRC, Bolt, those cards are what is going to kill me. I just want to lodge my protest at this moment. We're way past this discussion, but I think DRC was always the problem.
Yes, I actually agree with you on that, and it's a card I had been, you know, this was two or 3 years ago, back when Delver was a problem, like inherently a problem in the meta. I was like, if you get rid of DRC, I think this solves a lot of the issues. And now we're so far past that.
Yeah,
it's like, you know, like
it's
I feel like we're almost past Orcish Bowmasters being on the chopping block because things have just escalated so far down. This is my one moment where anybody in the comments goes, "This all this guy does is bitch about Orcish Bowmasters."
Yeah, but hey, you want that engagement, right? You always want
of course. Please comment below. Tell me you hate hearing me. Tell everyone that Orcish Bowmasters should be banned.
Yeah, I mean, I think DRC was maybe a reasonable target before Expressive Iteration.
Yeah.
My argument at that time was Expressive Iteration also goes in control decks. And to be honest with you, as a Doomsday player, if you're casting Expressive Iteration on turn 3, I'm fine with that. That's like the worst 2-mana play. I get that it's card advantage, but I'm just going to kill you before those cards matter.
Yeah.
The problem was DRC, which only win in that deck. But you're right. We're so far past that now.
So far past.
Blue-black Reanimator is at the top of the meta. Like
games just don't last that long. That like, I mean, they can, but like Deathrite Shaman, Dragon's Rage Chandler has felt like it's just good enough. Like even Delver, like we lost Delver for a while, right? But even Delver feels like when I open my hand and I'm like, I have a Delver and some other stuff, I'm like, man, I just wish this was like a Dragon's Rage Chandler, and I wish that was like something even better than a Dragon's Rage Chandler, because like I always feel even less now than I did before the last BNR, but I always feel like the game could end on like turn 2, and that's just like great. Now I got to attack one time with my 1/1 that like maybe surveilled one time. You know, in a rare instance, I can turn it into a 3/3 on my first attack. But I feel like if you're not like backed up with counter magic, or you know, like you have a little bit of interaction to bolt like a core or something like that, you're just naked. And playing like a 1 red mana guy and being like, I hope this gets me there. You know, against a lot of decks. I think against Doomsday specifically, that plan is good because I'm putting that pressure on you. And if you had to fetch to cast Doomsday. Now you're at 9, right? I untap, double bolt you, and hit you with the guy. Then that's game over, right? So there is that, like, you know, it is good enough. It just, like, sometimes, you know, it doesn't feel good enough compared to a lot of the other strategies that are happening, which is why I'm porting myself away from that deck.
That's why no one's talking about banning Delver stuff right now.
Yeah.
It lacks the 2-drop that really puts it over the top the way
We're
Psychic Frog did.
We're playing Questing Druid, for God's sakes. We're splashing another color and playing Questing Druid, pretending like that's good enough. It's like the first card I side out every time. We'll see. We'll see how stock up affects things as well. I think it's a little too early to say if stock up is a card that's, like, worth just staying in blue red and playing that over the, you know.
Yeah, costing 3 is obviously a huge issue. It feels like it could be busted in show and tell. But the exact thing that you're talking about right here is why Doomsday is not tier 1 or tier S, or however it's not higher, because my Delver opponents always have their companion DRC. It's always in their opening hand. I don't think I've ever played against a Delver player that didn't have turn 1 DRC. Add that to the fact that the other top tempo deck, blue-black, always has Bowmasters. And one way or another, the fact that you do so much damage to yourself with Doomsday, backed up with their disruption, makes those bad matchups.
Yeah. Especially if you know, you're putting yourself in a situation where you're at, like, 4 life, and then you're like, oh, I got to draw 3 cards. You know, like, he's going to attack me one time with his Bowmaster afterwards. You know, what if he has another Bowmaster? Yeah, that's a whole thing.
It's a huge squeeze. I will say that one thing that I have really learned through playing, for example, this sideboard juke plan, is that the thing that made Tempo Doomsday good, the thing that makes Blue-Black Reanimator so good, is that the core of Daze, Thoughtseize, Force of Will, Ponder, Brainstorm, that's half a deck. It's just really good. A lot of disruption, a lot of selection. You can kind of put almost anything you want around it. I think that is borne out with how good Blue-Black Reanimator has stayed.
Yeah.
Even without Psychic Frog. They're still just doing that stuff. Obviously, it can be beaten, but it feel impossible. If they have the right hand, there's just so much disruption.
Yeah. Well, we definitely got to get a deck list from you, so I'll have that listed below. Eric, it was awesome having you on. This was such a somber episode in comparison to, you know, like the Doomsday of Doomsday. But yeah, it was a super interesting chat and really fun to get in touch with you and hang out for a little bit.
Thanks for having me, Zach. It's always good to come on and just talk Magic for half an hour.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't doing anything else special with tonight.
All right. Well, again, thanks for coming on, and everybody, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.
See y'all.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button. It grows the legacy content ecosystem we all love by relaying to the platform that you are part of our passionate community.
And to go even further, click the links for subscription or to support directly via Patreon to help us create more content for you. Patreon supporters get 4 exclusive extra episodes per month. If you're listening on an audio platform, head over to patreon.com/EternalDurdles.
Thanks so much for your support.
We'll see you in the next one.